And you could see every single person in that room was so razor focused, locked into the person that was speaking, because it was real. This was real life that people were talking about. These were real life experiences and challenging. What that did for us, you could just see that, you could feel the group in the room at that time just getting closer. And metaphorically speaking, you could just see us coming closer and closer together.
This podcast is brought to you by Force 8 Coach, your sport, your platform. Welcome back to my podcast called Science and Sports. I'm your host, Simon, as usual. I was a former pro hockey player myself, now working as a sports scientist in the second ice hockey division here in Germany, and also for the under 17 German ice hockey national team as a strength and conditioning coach. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by Alan Keane. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Simon. Nice to be on here with you. And great job with your podcast. I discovered it recently via Job Franson and the recent episode you did with him. So delighted to be on here with you.
Thank you so much for joining me and for the kind words. Do you know Job personally?
I do, yes. Oh, we've never met, but we've had a few Zoom calls. He's come on and spoke to a group of coaches I work with, and even this morning we were exchanging WhatsApp messages. I mean, it's
awesome.
Nighttime in his world, but obviously early morning my time. We were a couple of hours.
It was a little tricky to get him on here due to the time difference to Australia, but for us it's a little bit easier. I'm based in Germany, you're based in the UK, I think. So thank you so much for making that happen.
Sure.
Before we get into the episode, could you give me a brief introduction about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Yeah. I'll work backwards. I'll start at the end and work backwards. Currently spending a lot of time working with coaches and a variety of coaches on different levels. Most of them are basketball coaches from the high performance professional level, full-time, all the way down to part-time coaches, semi-professional leagues, or high school in the States, where their job is seen as sometimes as more important as some of the professional coaches I work with. And also I've started doing some work in other sports with coaches from other sports, particularly swimming at the moment. So that's where I'm spending most of my time currently. I also still coach. It's something, even though I'm doing a lot of work with coach development and working with coaches in their spaces, the practice of coaching is something I'll never walk away from myself. So my other hat I wear is I'm a national team coach with Great Britain national team. Been doing that since 2009. So I've been in the system quite a long time. Different age groups from national team under 15s right through to the senior level. And yeah, I guess that's the coaching domain, whether it's I'm on the field of play, I'm in action coaching, or I'm supporting and developing coaches in their space. That's where I spend most of my time and have been for a number of years.
You just mentioned that you work with coaches, but you still want to coach. Why is that?
Because I feel coaching is an exciting space that continues to evolve, and it continues to change. And we can get into why I think it continues to change and it should change. We can get into that a little bit later. But I never want to lose touch with the reality. I never want to lose touch with what challenges come up. I never want to lose touch with connection. Like, the day I walk away from being involved and immersed in coaching myself, then I think that's going to be a sad day for me with the other profession. So with the hat I wear around coach development, being in sitting in the mud sometimes myself, and the daily challenges that come with coaching, I think it's equipping me to help other coaches in their space as well, because the relatability factor is important for me. I don't want to, I was lucky enough that I completed a professional doctorate in an aspect of coaching around self-regulated learning and how do you coach decision making and motivation and independent learning and all that stuff and team cohesion. So I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time in that space, but I don't want my relationship with the coaching domain, I don't want it to just be behind a computer screen talking to another coach, being on the sideline observing other coaches and encountering their coaching and supporting their journey. I'm excited, probably more so by the hands-on, building a team, building team cohesion, how to help somebody become a better player and achieve the best version of themselves. So I'm excited by both worlds. But I think one supports the other for me to do it better. So I'll continue in both spaces as long as I can.
Yeah. When you speak about team cohesion, I think the more or the better the players are working together also off the court in your case, and they don't have to be best friends, but if the team cohesion is there, the possibility for success rises, right?
Well, there's a lot of research out there for coaches that, if you have conflicting thoughts about anything in the coaching world, you can probably find some research on that topic. So if you take the topic of cohesion, there's been enough research out there now that tells us that a team who is socially cohesive, it impacts their task cohesion. So if you think
Mm-hmm.
about task cohesion as to the style of play, the interaction and engagement that happens on and I say field of play to represent all sports,
Yeah.
but the interactions, engagement, connections, the interdependency that happens on the field of play in teams, you could look at social cohesion as a performance enhancer for that. Now, social cohesion probably needs a bit more of a slight breakdown of a definition. Social cohesion doesn't mean, like you alluded to, they don't have to be best friends, but the relationship has to be built on trust, respect, and a level of respect is probably number one on that list. That social cohesion, those social cohesive elements, factors, again, there's been enough evidence to prove this. And from my own experience in leading teams for a number of years, a team that is socially cohesive performs the tactics that the coach has embedded with that group better. Their communication is better. Their connection is better. I mentioned the word interdependency. I think that's a really critical factor in all team sports. I know yours is ice hockey. My own is basketball. Without that interdependency, we are limited with how we perform. So I would look at social cohesion as a performance enhancer. And it begs the question, how does a coach intentionally go about developing a socially cohesive team in order that they are more cohesive on the field of play?
When you talk about that, what you just mentioned at the end, is there a blueprint for that? Or is it the classic team building, you go for a hike or you go for a bike ride and that's enough? Or is there more behind that?
I think the hike, or it's you hear a lot, especially at the collegiate system in the States, where coaches will bring the team around to their house preseason and do a barbecue. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's traditional to go bowling together and do social activities together. I think that's the surface level. That is the surface level. I don't believe that that's the deep rooted way of to build a socially cohesive group, because a socially cohesive group that has to be together over the course of a season, and especially at the pro level, as you will know, it's a daily connection. You probably spend more time with that pro team than you do with your own family
Yes,
because of the length
100%.
of the day that's involved.
Yeah.
So for me, social cohesion is more than a barbecue. It's more than a game of bowling. It's more than doing a social activity together. It's intentionality around getting to know each other on a level where we accept you for who you are, but we accept you because we understand you. We accept you because you've let us in. We accept you because you have allowed us to connect with you. And if you go
Mm-hmm.
back to, well, how do you get below the surface of just the barbecue or the movies or the social activity and actually get to this intentional level around knowing? Well, the coach is the custodian of that, because if the coaching staff are not intentional about setting that up, about going on that journey, the team won't do it naturally. Certain players on the team, as you'll know, will be close. They'll be closer with others than they will with some. So that's just the nature of group dynamics. So one easy way to do it is, I'll just spitball one idea. For example, I don't think there's a blueprint for anything. I just want to go back to that point.
Yeah.
I don't believe in blueprints, Simon. I believe in Job Franson used the term on your call with him. The coach's intuition.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in intuition. I think if we get too anchored to blueprints, if we get too strongly connected, like everything has to have a blueprint, style of play, communication, conversations, connections, team meetings. If we continue to follow blueprint group, we don't develop the skill of adaptability, and the coaches and the players greatest tool, greatest skill I consider is the ability to adapt to what's going on in front of you. So I wouldn't necessarily follow a blueprint. I would just gauge the temperature of this group and then make a decision on what I think could work, knowing it might not work, but I will gain some learning from the experience anyway. So, for example, years ago, we did an activity, we just called it circle time. And I got it from my wife, who worked in an inner city London school at the time. And she worked with kids with very challenging social needs in every capacity you could possibly think. And she shared with me an activity called Circle Time, and I incorporated it with our national team as we were heading off to the European Championships. Now, we had been together for probably 4 weeks, so we got over the surface level introductions, the surface level connections, and we did a Circle Time activity when we got to Macedonia. And we set as a circle day one, and we just went around the circle, and we did 3 rounds. Round one was, all right, tell us something about yourself that nobody else in this room knows. So coaching staff, physio, S&C, team manager, performance director, assistant coaches, head coach, everybody was part of this circle.
Mhm.
So I went first to kind of model, and I told them I play the djembe. It's an African hand drum, and that I go to Camden Market every Sunday and I sit there for 4 hours playing the djembe with a group of other people from different countries all over the world. And everybody was quite surprised because they were like, wow, I didn't know that that was an interest of yours, because all I spoke to the players about that point or the staff is basketball. So we went around and everyone got to know something unique about everybody. Round two was to lighten the load and set us up for round three, which is where the meat on the bone really came to life, or where the value really was. But round two was, tell us something about yourself that is funny, and you might be even a little bit embarrassed, but you feel safe enough to tell us. So one player told us how, as a child, he got a chocolate. He put a chocolate up his nose as a child. He couldn't get it out, so they had to take him to the hospital, and they had to melt the chocolate out of his nose.
Oh,
So
God.
everyone's laughing and everyone's having a good time, and everybody went around. So then we got to the pivotal part of this, and again, I just this full disclosure here, or disclaimer. I wouldn't advise coaches to do what I'm about to say. I wouldn't advise coaches to do this early. I would advise coaches to do this after you've been together for a number of weeks and you feel the time is right. Go back to your intuition.
Mhm.
Is this the right time to do this activity? So, round three, I asked the players to go around in a circle, and I led first to model it. And I asked them to share with us a difficult moment they had in their life that was very challenging for them, but they overcame it. And we know you overcame it because you're sitting here today with your national team jersey on. You're sitting here about to represent your country while everybody back home watches you and supports you. So if you're comfortable, and if you're not comfortable, you can just say pass. There's no judgment. But if you want to go as deep as you want to go, or as not as deep as you don't want to go, you have complete agency. Well, can you tell us about a difficult time in your life that you experienced, but you overcame that experience regardless how difficult it was? So I talked to the group about a challenge I had in my life, and I shared with them the difficulties that came with it. And then I shared with them how I overcame it. That went on for about 30 minutes by the time everyone spoke, and everybody spoke, and the more they spoke, the more they were eager to share. And
Mhm.
you could see every single person in that room was so razor focused, locked into the person that was speaking, because it was real. This was real life that people were talking about. These were real life experiences and challenging. What that did for us, you could just see that, you could feel the group in the room at that time just getting closer. And metaphorically speaking, you could just see us coming closer and closer together. We finished that activity. I basically captured the essence of it as a coach, which is always a good thing to try to do at the end of meetings. If we can capture the essence so everybody leaves with a shared understanding of the experience we had, instead of leaving the meeting with isolated interpretations. That's
Mhm.
something we should talk about in a moment, but slightly different. I captured the essence of everything we heard in that room at the end. Tried my best, at least anyway. And we finished up, and I didn't encourage this or influence this, but everybody started hugging each other in the room. Everyone left there by going walking around giving everyone a hug. Basically, the hug said, "Thank you for letting me into your world. Thank you for sharing. I was fascinated, but just basically thank you. It strengthened the connection of the group. That was a social connection activity. It wasn't talking about tactics or the scout reports or the player tendencies of the opposition, but it definitely helped us. And the key message here is that activity definitely helped us to be better with the scout report, to be better locked in on the player tendencies and the performance indicators for the game.
Mm-hmm. Is this just a quick follow-up question? Because you said you want to talk a bit more about the coach leaving the room scenario. Just one follow-up question. Is this something you could do in different settings, let's say different age groups, different levels, different genders? Is there a limit on where you can do it, or start to do it only age up 15 or over, something like that? Or could you do it practically with any team?
I think you have to be aware, like we go back to coach's intuition. Like there's no one's better placed to say whether you should do this with your group than the head coach. Because you're the one that really spends the most time with the group and in the individuals. So I will say it's down to the coach's intuition. However, I want to raise some red flags. I want to raise some blind spots that a listener who's listening, there's probably a listener who's just listened to that story, Simon, and they will say, man, that's brilliant. I'm going to do that with my team.
Yeah.
My advice to that coach is pump the brakes, stop, and have a real think about what if they come back and say to you something that's very, very sensitive, and they break down crying in front of the group and they're disclosing something that they've never disclosed before, and suddenly it's out there in a group, and the group has only been together 1 week and they don't really know each other. You got to be very careful, because that's dangerous territory if you're not sure how to manage it, deal with it, facilitate it. And what do you do next? Do you need to signpost? Do you need to connect with parents? And like, what do you do next with that? So you have to be very, very careful of how you pitch this. You have to be very careful. And I think they're the blind spots as you listen to a story. Just because we had a lot of success with it and it really helped us come together and be stronger and be a tighter knit group, these were under 20s. These were national team players. So they were effectively adults. They were the age of 19 and 20. I've subsequently done it with a professional men's team. And in that professional men's team, we did it 3-4 months into the season. And one of our senior players, one of the more experienced players, broke down crying, talking about an experience he had. That was a safe space for all of us, because we were all adults. We were all mature enough to be sensitive enough about what he spoke about and not go on social media and say anything about it. Whereas if you did it with an under 16 group, you got to be very careful about how you pitch it, because are the people you're doing this with mature enough to respect what they should do with that? And is there a disconnect within the group where one group may use it against another person? You just got to be very careful how you set it up. You don't like the circle time activity. You can just change the question. I gave you 3 questions.
Yes.
Something new about yourself, something fun, and then a traumatic moment in your life that you've overcome. You don't have to go with question 3. You can go with a lighter tone to that. And again, you're back to the intuition of the coach. They should just need to use their intuition and be sensitive to that.
But I think it's in general a good idea to get to know the players first and to learn about their lives, to, like you just mentioned, the social aspect of it, just to know who you're sitting against, who you work with for a whole season of 8 to 9 months, for example. And I mean, you know it obviously better than I do as a coach for that many years, but you have players and seniors who are 17, 18 years old, and then you have a couple of players who are in their mid-30s with families, with kids, married, and they have different interests in life, which is totally fine. But if you get them on the same page, and like we said, they don't have to be the best friends, they probably won't be, but just to respect each other, and even if the older guy knows that he can still learn from, let's say, the younger guy, or the other way around, or that he can also say something to the older guy without being disrespectful or without that he knows that he will not get in trouble for that. Let's put it this way. I think that's a big aspect of being a good team, and then you can bring the team performance again on the ice, on the pitch, on the field. Yeah.
Can I give to extend on what you said there, Simon?
Yes, please.
I'll preempt this by saying I co-own a business called Movement Sports. This is not a plug, but this is just to explain where it came from, what I'm about to say. And with that business, we work with supporting coaches, and we have a couple of taglines, if you want to say. And one of the taglines is "No coach should work alone," and that's a whole different topic. But one of the better points of emphasis, or one of the better beliefs and values we hold when we work with coaches, is a better understanding of the people you coach facilitates you as a coach to coach them better. So a better understanding of your players, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. That's not easy, by the way, to truly understand the needs and the motivations of each player on your squad. That takes time, investment of time. It's emotionally laborious, and it takes you stepping back really and asking intentional questions, effective questions, and then listening with intent, listening to understand, listening to digest. But in summary, we promote very strongly a better understanding of the people you coach allows you to coach them better. And I think, like, I look back on when I was a teacher for a number of years, Simon, in an inner city school in London, and the longer I was in that space, the longer I was in that domain, the more I got conflicted with what I was forced to do as a teacher. As a teacher, I was forced to teach a curriculum, 100% of the curriculum. My feeling as I got more experience as a teacher was these young people would be better off, and I would serve them better if I only taught them 70 or 80% of this curriculum, because they will understand it better, deeper. They will have a grasp of it more, as opposed to me just getting through 100% of it. And that goes back to understanding the people that are in front of us. Like when you walk into a room as a coach, I'm going to say something conflicting here that coaches might push back on. As a teacher, when I walk into a room, no longer, but back in those days, when I walked into a room in front of these pupils, regardless whether they were 12 years old or 18-year-old, when I walk into a pro team and I've got players in front of me, or I walk into a community team and I got players in front of me, I am not the expert in that room. I don't care if you're in a classroom, you're in a pro environment, you're the head coach, you're in a community session, you're the leader. You are not the expert in that space. And I'm going to extend what I mean by that, just so it hopefully makes sense to the listeners. What I mean by you are not the expert, you are not the expert of them. So teams win or lose based on players' performance. The players are the experts. My job is to understand the needs and the motivation of each one of these experts, so I can facilitate the right environment that helps them fully achieve their potential, to fully enhance their ability to where they put their attention, to fully enhance their ability to how intense they practice, and to fully enhance and facilitate an environment where they're very intentional about the choices they make in every moment. Because as a coach, as a head coach, and as a teacher, if I scale back what traditional teacher means, what traditional coach means, if I scale that back and I say, right, let's forget all that. What do I think a teacher is? What do I think a coach is, a head coach is? I think they are somebody who facilitates a learning environment that allows the participants to achieve excellence. And can I break down excellence for you? Excellence is individual. It's not a group thing. It's an individual thing. Collectively, it can be something else. But excellence being doing the best I can with what I have in the present moment, every moment. Excellence is doing the best I can with what I have in the present moment, every moment. And if I'm going to facilitate that as a coach and opportunities for players to achieve excellence, then I've got to have a deep understanding of what drives that player, What gets in the way of that player's motivation? What enhances their confidence? What takes their confidence away? It might be me. It could be my body language on the sideline. So I've got to have a deeper understanding of the needs and the motivations of the people I'm coaching if they're going to achieve excellence.
So would you say then it should be better, let's say in pro sports, to be a coach who is up for results, or a coach who is also there for his players, who knows them, not just the name of him and his wife, let's say, but he knows what's going on in his life, to build this kind of relationship, to tell him or to teach him, to show him that he's not only here for winning games, he's also here for developing the player as a person, and that he cares for you as well.
I think we've got to acknowledge that professional coaches, the thing that will matter most for a professional coach in order for them to keep their job, in order for them to be able to pay for their mortgage, in order for them to be able to facilitate for their family, that coach needs to win. That's the reality of professional sports.
Yeah.
All right. So let's acknowledge that, because that exists. So when we see coaches be like, what really annoys me, Simon, is people who don't work in that space going on social media, critiquing the behavior they see on the sideline when they have very little understanding as to the pressures, the social pressures, and the environmental and organizational pressures that are on those coaches. Because anybody who critiques those coaches, if they were in that space, they'd probably do a lot worse. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's really important. Now, I believe, and I've seen it, and I've supported coaches through it, that you can win and have winning and impact on people. They don't have to compete. They can work together. It's not like oil and water, they don't mix. Oh, I got a coach to win, or I got a coach to have an impact on that person's life. Greg Popovich from the San Antonio Spurs is a wonderful example. Brian Goorjian from the Sydney Kings is a wonderful example of people who can do both. They can coach this team to win. They can coach these players to reach their potential and achieve excellence, but they can also coach them in a way where their relationship is based on authenticity. It's based on respect. It's based on the respect that these players have agency, they have a voice, and they have a choice. It's based on, I'm going to develop leadership traits in these young people so they go on to be better mothers, better fathers, better husbands, better wives, better family members. So I strongly advocate that they don't work in isolation. And I'll also advocate this, Simon. If you coach the person to be a better person, I believe that that's a performance enhancer on the field of play. If the field of play is being enhanced, the performance is being enhanced, the winning is more likely to come. But the source of it, and I think the driver that's underneath it, is coaching the person. And there's like, I love the fact, now it's very this, I'm going to give some recency bias here. I love the fact that UCLA women won the NCAA tournament 2 days ago. I love the fact that Michigan won the NCAA men's competition 2 days ago. Both were basketball. And I love it because the coaches both display care in their coaching. They've both been interviewed and gone on record for a number of years to say things like, I don't have to shout and be demonstrative to get the best out of my players. I don't believe in that. I believe in connection. I believe in coaching them effectively through a place of care. Like if you think about traditional approaches to coaching, Simon, like traditional approaches to delivering our coaching profession, traditional approaches to delivering sport, they're in current times, it's not enough to meet the emerging needs of the players we're coaching. Players have changed. You've been a pro, so you've got a good temperature on this, I'm sure. You've had teammates from different spaces and different times and different time periods. You're now coaching players of a different era. Well, the world has changed. The emerging needs of people are changing. And sport, like coaching, is being really challenged right now to adapt to this rapidly changing context. So, for example, there is a sharp rise in mental health issues across many communities, including coaches, by the way. There's a spike in it at the moment, sadly. And young people that we're coaching, whether they're young adults, whether they're teenagers, they've been affected by things like the pandemic, lockdowns, and so on. So we're working with a different person that's had different experiences. There's an increasing level of understanding and awareness around social inequalities, and heightened awareness around diversity, equity, and inclusion in sports. Well, if a coach isn't aware that these people are hyper aware of this stuff more so now than before, then if you're not aware that you're potentially going to coach people with a blindfold on, and you're going to miss the target. So I think there's also shifts in power. If you think back to, I know when I played, and I'm speaking for the majority of coaches I encountered, that style of coaching won't work anymore because there's a shift in the power dynamic. So if you look at the collegiate system in the States, for example, Simon, the NIL and the transfer portal, this has shifted the power dynamic to the players. For the first time, the players can, choose to leave and go somewhere better and whatever else. So if you're not coaching through a place of care and being transformational, and if you're just being transactional and it's about the winning and will do anything to win it, a win at all costs approach, I think those coaches are going to be left behind more and more as time goes. And I'm not saying, this is the thing about coaching through a place of care, Simon. I'm not saying we have to be their friend. I'm not saying we have to act like a parent. I'm not saying it's soft. I'm saying that coaching through a place of care is more difficult than the traditional form of coaching that we might have been used to, because you have to invest more time. You have to be intentional about how you connect with somebody. You have to respect their needs and motivations, and you still have to find a way to win, because that's important for the pro coach. I'll say one more thing, and then I promise you I'll take a breath. One more thing I want to say. The choice of tactics that you choose as a head coach, and I'm giving it now from my experience. I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but this is right for me in my current journey as a coach and coach developer. Your choice of tactics as a head coach will say more about your level of care for the athletes or your level of ego, depending on how those tactics get played out by those players. So, for example, if I'm selecting tactics because I like this tactic and I believe in these tactics, and if I'm not considering the type of players I'm coaching, then I'm serving my needs and motivations as a coach and not the players' needs and motivations as a coach. Everyone's a loser in that dynamic. So the players having to conform, adapt, and adjust, they may not be able to. So your choice of tactics could go very easily fits under the banner of coaching through a place of care, because I'm going to choose tactics that suit the needs, suit the strengths, and suit the motivation, especially the strengths of these players. So I may have to incorporate tactics this year that I've never used before. So I got to upskill myself as opposed to the players upskilling themselves to suit my tactics. So again, care in coaching is not just it's not the traditional sense of the word care. It's not that at all. It's quite the opposite. It's actually very hard and it's very difficult.
Before I open a whole new segment I would like to talk to you about, I would rather prefer to finish with one more question regarding what you just mentioned in the last little segment about the changes from, let's say, the time you played to now, or the time I was playing to at the moment, and the change in the role of the coach. Is there something that, with your experience and with your knowledge that you gained, some aspect or one thing that a coach nowadays, maybe someone is listening, should start doing to be in the right state of mind, or to follow the trend along, or stop doing the other way around, whatever you prefer?
Yeah, I think there's very rich conversations to be had about that question, but I'm going to anchor it just to one thing, like you said. Because we could talk about start, stop, and continue as three categories to really unbox, but we don't have the time. But I think one thing I've noticed with the coaches I've worked with, Simon, and my own experience, the greatest tool that we have, And the greatest facilitator for our coach development is something we use too often with the players and not enough with ourselves. And it's the video camera. It's the video camera. We do so much video analysis, especially at the pro level, as you know, and in the performance level. We do so much video analysis with players, with the opposition, scouting, game reviews. I would strongly and really urge every coach, any coach I work with, if they're not recording themselves, I can't work with them. Like, it's almost a deal breaker. And most of the coaches I've worked with, Simon, from the highest level coach to high school coaches in the States, recording themselves and reviewing and analyzing their own coaching by just watching themselves is very, very, very rarely done. And I get it. Like, I'm going to talk about the greatest constraint to this here is actually the time constraint. Coaches trying to find the time for that. I'm not saying you do that every day, every week, but if you're doing it 5 times a year, if you can fit it in 5 times a season, or even once every 6 weeks, or you do, one of the greatest ways to do it is if you have timeouts or your pregame, your halftime, your postgame, record that, watch it Monday morning when you get back into the office after the game. If that's the first 15 minutes of your day, just watching, observing, noticing, then you're moved a long way. Because the greatest player development is coach development. If you want your players to play better, then you've got to coach better. So the greatest player development is coach development. So you got to ask the question, what am I doing as a coach this year to enhance and improve myself as a coach? And I'll summarize with this one statement, Simon, and I'll wrap up there. Coaches need to ask themselves, take a 20-year experienced coach, someone who's been coaching at the pro level 20 years. The question should be asked of that coach, do you really have 20 years experience, or do you have 1 year's experience repeated 20 times? Because what you'll find, the latter is true in a lot of cases when you have the conversation and you get past the surface level BS and you have an honest, authentic, genuine conversation about that coach's experience. You will hear and you will learn that that coach doesn't have 20 years. They've 1 year that they've repeated 20 times. And there's no evolution. So the greatest player development, coach development.
Oh, some good insights at the end. But when you said about the videotaping for a coach, I've never seen a coach when I was playing or when I was now coaching or doing my strength stuff, a coach who records themselves and rewatches that. So that's an interesting take. A very good one for sure.
I'm happy to send you some videos, Simon. I've got probably 12 years of recording of my timeouts with the national team. And I'll tell you how I used to do it. Our team manager, who would fill the water bottles and the towels and all that stuff, I would give him my phone before every game. This is 12 to 15 years. I think 12 years, probably 12 or 13 years. I would give him my phone before every game. And as a basketball coach, we get timeouts throughout the game, as you know.
Yeah.
He would record pregame. He would record all the timeouts. He would record the halftime. And then that's the first thing I would watch the next day before I scout the game. And it only took me 15 minutes or 20 minutes to watch that. But I often learned most then with that format.
Okay. I will keep that in mind. That's an interesting take. But I don't want to hold you up for any longer. I know we both have to go, sadly. Would love to continue on that conversation, maybe in the future with you again, because it was some very nice conversation, very useful insights to get to know from your experiences and the knowledge you shared. So I hope we can talk again maybe in the future. But for now, on my end, thank you very much for joining me, Alan. It was a pleasure talking to you and that you found some time in your busy schedule talking to me. And I wish you all the best until the next time, hopefully.
Thank you, Simon. And just a big congratulations to you and your podcast. It's a wonderful listen. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alan. I hope we can talk again.
Sure.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating or comment, and share it with someone who loves sports science. And for more content, follow me on Instagram at science_in_sports_. See you in the next episode.